It's an audio test for the web stream.
Good evening. Welcome to the September 16th Planning Commission meeting. I'm going to go ahead and read a little something for members of the public calling in. As a courtesy, members of the public may participate remotely in this meeting. Please refer to the meeting agenda for information about how to provide public comments either in person here in the room or via Zoom. Any person may address the commission on any item listed on this agenda. Persons wishing to speak on the items listed on the agenda will be heard when called by staff. You're welcome to speak for up to 3 minutes each. Public comments from remote participants on Zoom will be audio only. This means members of the public wishing to address the commission will be allowed to speak live. Their video will not be shown and screen sharing will not be an option. Finally, since the city cannot guarantee that the public's access to teleconferencing technology will be uninterrupted, the option for the public to participate remotely is only a courtesy. If technical difficulties arise for participants using the Zoom teleconferencing option, the meeting will continue unless required otherwise by the Brown Act. We'll go ahead and do roll call. We only have 4.
Right. Yeah.
4, 5. Do we only have 4 planning commissioners?
No, Stephen.
Oh, yeah. Okay, my bad. Okay, roll call. Commissioner Mason.
Present.
Gosh. Commissioner Heising.
Present.
Commissioner Sturm.
Present.
And I'm Commissioner Radnich. I'm present. Gosh, that's my bad. And now I
Are you?
feel-
Are you present?
Well, yeah, this is the right number.
God, it's getting very hot in here. Adoption of the agenda. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Public comments. This is an opportunity for anyone to provide comments for items not on tonight's agenda. I assume there's none in the room. See a head shaking no. Are there any online?
If you would like to speak on any item not on tonight's agenda, but within the purview of the Planning Commission, please raise your hand in Zoom now. Seeing none.
Okay. Thank you. Item 5, presentation. There's a fiscal sustainability presentation by staff. So we will receive the presentation, please.
The City Manager and Administrative Services Director are on Zoom, so to present to you. And so they are panelists in the Zoom meeting and should have screen sharing enabled to share the slide deck. If they're unable to, I can do so.
Thank
Okay.
you, Greg. Thank you and good evening, Planning Commissioners. Thank you so much for accommodating us on this agenda. Tracy is going to be making the presentation this evening. We just wanted to present to you the factual information about our fiscal status and about Measure H. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Tracy.
Hi, everyone. Tracy Robinson, Administrative Services Director, and it says sharing's not turned on. That's going to be, is that possible to turn that on?
We'll check things on this end.
If not, I guess Greg can do it, but I'll have to tell him when to. Oh, wait, here we go.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think it should be good now.
Okay. Let me just get my presentation up so I can start. Okay. Let's go back. Share. Oh, shoot. I'm having a little trouble getting it to share the right screen. Hold on. Current slide. And let me go to Zoom. All right. Well, that's not working very well for me, so let's just try this. Okay, here we go. I think we're good now. Okay. Let's see. Okay, can you see my screen that says City of Lafayette, Measure H?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Okay, here we go. So, every presentation we do starts with the financial buckets that we talk about. This is the way that we the city finances don't really work like regular personal finances. The city has funds that come from different places, and those funds sometimes come with strings attached to them. And we put them in different buckets called funds. So for example, oh no, it's not working, you guys. I'm sorry, it's not advancing.
Perhaps Greg can run the presentation for us?
Okay, wait, can you see it now?
No, it's still the 3 buckets.
Okay. I don't understand why it's not advancing. Okay, well, if Greg can run it, I guess that would be better. I don't know why it's not working.
Happy to do that. I will plug in the cable, but I have to move my laptop further up
So
table.
sorry, it was
Very
working
much.
earlier today.
Tracy, we're just getting situated on this end for a sec.
Yeah, okay, sorry about that.
It's okay, thanks.
Many thanks. Tracy, we're good to go in the room. The AV tech is going to switch the source, and now it is up on screen in the room.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, hold on 1 second. Okay, thank you so much. I'm gonna start over. Okay, great. So unlike most of your personal finances, government finances often come with strings attached and rules about how the funds can be spent. So to keep track, we segregate the money into what we refer to as buckets. And in the budget, they're called funds. Things like gas taxes need to be spent on specific things like road maintenance. Impact fees are also reserved for specific uses like buying additional parkland or building certain types of infrastructure. The general fund is the bucket that the city council can spend on anything. And that's the bucket that we're going to be concentrating on today because it's the most flexible. Next slide. So, where does the money come from? Well, there are 5 biggest sources are property taxes, sales taxes, franchise fees, those are cable and utilities, fees for service, and money from the state. Next slide. So the biggest source for us is property tax. You probably already know that Lafayette is an affluent community and that homes here are very expensive. I believe our median home price is about close to or possibly right now over $2 million. So while that sounds really great for the city, it doesn't mean that the city is actually getting a large portion of those sales taxes. Out of the 1% countywide property tax, Lafayette receives only 6.7% of that. So let's go through let's look at what that would look like. So next, click again. So on $1 million home, click. Property owner would pay $10,000 for the 1% countywide tax. And that means that the city only gets $670 from that. So, next slide. The city is called what is a low property tax city. I know it doesn't seem like that when everybody writes their checks. However, one of the main differences is that there is a difference in how much of that 1% property tax each of the cities in the county receives. So you can see that Lafayette is close to the bottom, 6.7%. That percentage ranges anywhere from 27.68% all the way down to 5.44%. Next. So our next biggest source of revenue in the general fund is sales tax. Everyone's familiar with what a sales tax is. In Lafayette, the rate's currently 8.75%. So for every taxable dollar spent, it's an additional 8 3/4 cents. So how much does Lafayette get out of that? We get 1 cent for every dollar, 1%. Where does the rest go? Well, the state gets almost 4%. That's close to half. County mental health gets about 1.5%. The county also gets 1%, which is split between their general fund and for public safety for Lake County Hospital, emergency medical, and fire. And then there's a total of 1.25% for public transportation that's split between BART, CCTA, Contra Costa Transit Authority, and general county transportation. Next slide. So once the city fills up the general fund revenue bucket, how do we spend our money? So in accordance with the city's longstanding policy of the 4 Ps, 36%, the largest portion, goes to police. 26% goes to public works, that's roads and potholes and landscaping. 13% goes to planning for both long-range planning and current planning. And then 6% goes to parks, trails, and rec, and that's mostly for maintenance of the community center and the ball fields. And the last 20% is for general operations. That's basically back office operations, legal expenses, city clerk, city manager, city council, and all the rest. So, what is the most important thing about a budget? Is that it is balanced. We don't want to spend more than we bring in. Lafayette is proud to have been able to balance our budgets for more than 25 years. And in order to properly plan finances, we must look forward into the future to see how we think expenses will line up with revenue and make adjustments if necessary. Next slide. So when we do our 5-year budget forecast, it looks like this. This shows that expenses are outpacing revenues for the current level of services. If this trend continues, the city will run entirely through its reserve in about 5 years. This deficit is currently about 10% of the budget, which is a little bit over $2 million. So again, I want to stress that this is for current level of services. This does not include any new programs or services. It is for baseline services being provided currently. Next slide. So the question, of course, we get most often when we've shared this 5-year revenue outlook is, how did this happen? Why did this happen? Next. There's a couple of reasons, and they all add up together to create this deficit. The first is pavement management. The cost to maintain our 92 miles of public roads in good conditions increased by about $1 million a year. That accounts for about half of the deficit. And that's due to various factors, the main one being that there was a 33% increase in the cost of contracted labor and materials for road paving in the past 5 years, as compared to only a 23% increase in the revenue for that over the same period. In addition, there are increasing costs of ancillary infrastructure, such as curbs, ramps, sidewalks, pathways, flashing crossing beacons, stormwater retention facilities. All those things are necessary. However, they have redirected money away from pure paving projects and added to the infrastructure that was going to require ongoing maintenance. Next slide. Next is the cost of insurance. Insurance includes general liability insurance, property insurance, employment insurance, workers' comp. All of that as a whole has gone up 144% over the last 5 years. So that increase is due to a variety of factors. They include a nationwide increase in losses due to weather events, increasing incidents of wildfire, especially in California, and also increasing litigation against cities, coupled with large increases in the size of jury awards. I want to emphasize here that Lafayette hasn't had any major losses or large litigation awards. However, these are factors that are driving up the insurance industry costs as a whole, and it trends then towards higher premiums for everyone. Next. Unfunded mandates. This also contributes to the deficit because the state continues to mandate programs and policies onto cities without providing additional local revenues to do so. One good example of this is stormwater pollution. The State Water Board continually increases the requirements for compliance with clean water regulations without giving the cities additional revenue to complete those tasks. Over the last 10 years, the costs related to those services have increased by about 78%. And as a result, the current gap between what we actually do receive for stormwater pollution and what it costs is about $300,000 a year. That will continue to grow due to inflation and probably additional state mandates. Another example is the staff, time, and resources need to implement affordable housing requirements. So in addition to the $215,000 annually that we have started to set aside to assist with affordable housing projects, the 60 programs that were submitted to HCD that the city is going to be required to implement is going to require about 1 full-time employee for the next few years. Next. So maintenance. So for many years, it's been the city's practice to set aside money in what we call a sinking fund to accrue funds for large capital expenses that we know we will incur in the future. This is just a very good fiscal practice. For example, if you know you're going to have to put a roof on your house in 25 years, it would be a good idea to set money aside every year so that when you do need a roof, you're not hit with a single large expense that you don't have the money for. So we have been doing that for many years. We put aside money for things like ball field rehabilitation, vehicle replacements, roof repair on the community center, playground equipment, and the library capital expenses for the library. However, as the city's grown and as acquired assets, and also as inflation has had its effect, these amounts are no longer sufficient for the current inventory. And in addition, there is no additional money for future projects that will require maintenance. Next is inflation. I don't have to explain this to anybody because we all experience it when we go to the grocery store, when we fill up our cars. So again, the city is experiencing the effects of inflation, and the simple fact is that the revenues are not increasing at the same rate as inflation. Finally, there are community priorities that the city has been responsive to and wants to remain responsive to. In a recent survey, 93% of residents polled indicated that they were satisfied with the city services in Lafayette. Residents expressed that their highest priorities were road maintenance, wildfire preparedness, police services, traffic safety, and senior and youth programs. Go ahead. It's also important to understand, and I want to stress it because I said it before, is that this deficit is structural. That means that it's due to ongoing baseline costs that are outpacing revenue. This deficit is not due to spending money on any one particular project in the past. This 5-year model takes into account only baseline programs and services that keeps the city services at their current level. For example, it keeps the current number of police officers. It keeps the road and infrastructure maintenance so that the roads continue to be maintained in a good condition. And it continues things like code enforcement, parks and trails maintenance, planning activities, and so on. So there are 2 ways to balance a budget. The first way, obviously, is to reduce expenses. And the city is already doing this to a certain extent. We have used about half of our ARPA money, that's the American Rescue Plan Act money, to bridge the deficit this fiscal year. We have frozen some positions, and the council has agreed to forego any new tasks or projects. So, if the sales tax doesn't pass, the city will need to cut or eliminate programs. So given that 10% over the budget is a large number, those cuts are likely going to be made in every department, which includes police, engineering, public works, even the parks and facilities. So the second way to balance a budget is to increase revenue. And that is where Measure H comes in. Measure H is going to be on the November ballot. So the city replaced Measure H on the ballot to bridge the budget deficit. It is a 1/2 cent sales tax. That tax will be in effect for 7 years and will include a citizens oversight committee. It is a general sales tax, and it requires only a simple majority vote of 50% plus 1 for approval. Another question we have been asked is why the city council decided to ask the voters for a sales tax rather than another kind of tax, for example, property tax. And there are a number of reasons. The first is that a sales tax of only 1/2% would generate the $2.4 million that's necessary to fill the current budget gap. Also, a sales tax is paid by visitors who dine and shop in Lafayette, as well as local residents. So that means that the burden doesn't fall entirely to Lafayette residents, and people who use our amenities will also contribute to the upkeep. Third, most groceries and prescription drugs are exempt from being charged sales tax. Next, it is relatively painless in that it's paid a little bit at a time as you do your purchases rather than like a property tax, which is going to be paid in lump sums twice a year. And finally, this tax, the proceeds from this 1/2 cent increase will stay in Lafayette. We don't have to share this 1/2 cent with anybody. And finally, would like to point out that currently Lafayette has the lowest sales tax in the immediate region. Raising the tax a 1/2 cent would still put Lafayette less than Moraga and Orinda, and equal to Pleasant Hill, Walnut Creek, and Concord. So at this point, that is the presentation, and Narup and I are here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the Planning Commission for staff? Commissioner Heising?
Yeah, thanks Tracy for that presentation. I think that last slide particularly was telling, that showed the rest of the county and the percentages, because that gives everybody perspective. And I want to thank you for the presentation, just walking through the different buckets or funds, just so we all can understand. And there's 4 of us sitting at the dais here, and there's 3 people in the audience for the paint booth item that's next on the agenda. So I guess my biggest question is, how are we getting this out to the public? I'm sure there's going to be a table at the Lafayette Art and Wine Festival. You probably had a presentation in front of the council, but how are we really going to get to everybody, and so folks can understand what's at hand here and what's potentially in jeopardy with our streets, with, you know, our staffing at each of the department levels. And I was really surprised that that the public poll showed roads over police. So that's, I mean, in my book, I'm an engineer, so I think roads are important, obviously, because I do that kind of work in my day job. But in my opinion, having a robust police force is of prime importance to me. That's what keeps this community safe. So how do we get all that out to the public?
You want me to start, Narup? And you
Go
can
ahead, please.
So we've been working on this for a while. We had put out 2 issues of Vistas, which comes to every household. We put one out in January, and I believe we put it out again in May, which basically described the issue and the problem, and why we are facing a deficit now. Vistas goes to every single household. We have done this presentation to as many community groups as we can get in front of. Narup and I have been going out basically with this dog and pony show. We are going to every commission as well. We have another issue of Vistas coming out. It'll probably be coming out the first part of October. And then there's also going to be a separate mailer that's going to be coming out, I think, in the next week or 2, that talks about the issues, and it talks about Measure H. We do have what I feel like is a very robust website. If you go to the front page of our website at lovelafayette.org, on the left-hand side, you'll see a button that says Measure H. If you hit that button, there is a lot of information there. You'll have links to the meetings that it talked about at the city council, some additional information that we've put out, links to those vistas that I talked about, that people can reread. You want to add anything, Narup?
No, what the city can do at this point is to inform, and we're available, Tracy and I. We'll go to people's houses to inform if they have questions. We're always available to answer questions. There's a separate Measure H committee that the city is not involved with, which advocates for the measure, but we strictly are here to let you know our financial status and the reason for Measure H.
And just to address your last point, which was roads versus police, I would say those were very close. I mean, I wouldn't say that, you know, I think maybe strictly one got a little bit more, but they were both very high in the poll. And I believe if you go on our website and you go back to the meetings where we presented the polls, you can see exactly how that came out.
Okay, thank you. Just one last question. What can we do to help? And can we, I know staff cannot advocate, but are commissioners exempt from that, or can commissioners abdicate? What are we allowed to do?
You, as officials from the city, you cannot advocate for the measure. You can inform if people ask you questions. You can explain our financial status. You can direct them to the website. If you want to advocate, as I said before, there's a separate committee, the Measure H committee, that is involved with advocacy.
I believe you can do it as a private citizen.
Yes, as a resident of Lafayette.
As a resident, yes, but not
Yes.
in your official capacity.
Got it. Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Commissioner Sturm?
All right, thank you for the presentation. Just a question. I remember the city's reserve is something like 60 something percent. Is that
Mm.
right?
Correct.
And so you said right now we have a deficit and we'll have a deficit each year going forward. There's two questions. When do we decide to pull from the reserve? And then when you go through this process of sort of maybe shifting things or making cuts among the different departments, like what does that process look like? Like, will it be coming back to us or the city council or?
Sure. I'll answer the second one and I'll let Tracy respond to your first one, Commissioner Sturm. On June 10th, the staff presented a proposal, a series of budget cuts to the city council, and the cuts spanned all departments. So each department head was charged with looking at their budgets and cutting approximately 10%. And if Measure H does not pass, the city council will start engaging the public in discussions about those potential cuts. And they have this base, this set of proposals from the department heads. If they choose to save some programs in one department, they will be required to cut in others. So it's going to be an exercise that they will undertake after November the 5th if Measure H doesn't pass. And everyone is invited to attend council meetings and let the council know what they want cut and what they don't.
And so I'll address the issue of the reserve. The council's current policy is that they keep 60%, an amount that's equal to 60% of general fund expenditures as a reserve. So with a roughly $20 million budget, the reserve should be around $12 million. So that reserve was and is always meant to be for emergencies. We do live in earthquake country. We all know that we live in fire zone. So that money is really meant to be spent for emergencies. We know, for example, we had heard when there were the fires up in sort of the Napa area, our colleagues there told us that you could easily go through $1 million a day spending just to in the moment fighting that and cleaning up. A question that we do get asked is, well, wouldn't you get reimbursed by the government for those expenses? Some of those expenses may be reimbursable by FEMA. Our experience with FEMA, even for smaller amounts of money, is that it takes a long time, could be up to 5 years before we would actually even see any money. But some of those expenses wouldn't necessarily be reimbursable. So that's been the city's longstanding policy. Certainly the council could decide to release some of that money to release some pressure on the budget. But again, those are one-time funds. Once they're gone, they're gone. And the model itself, we don't see that there is going to be, that we see that deficit is going to continue, that it's not going to go away. So once your one-time funds are spent, you're still going to come back to the same place.
Right. And with Measure H, Thank you for those explanations. So with Measure H, it's foreseen that it's going to cover the delta for the next 5 years over the term that it's active. And then when we get close to the end of those 5 years, we'll sort of reassess where we're at. But we won't have to necessarily make the cuts if Measure H passes.
That's correct. If Measure H passes, we will be able to bridge that gap completely. That's one of the reasons that the council decided on a half cent, that it was exactly what we needed, not more, but just what we needed to bridge that gap. And it should cover it for the next 7 years. Means we'll still need to be careful with how we spend the money, but we won't have to make any cuts.
In your graph that showed the lines for expenses and income, how do you deal with inflation? Like,
I have inflation built into my model. That graph was pretty it was illustrative. I wouldn't say it was, specific, but
Yeah.
the 5-year model that I work on that shows the deficit does account for inflation. It does account for inflation being at a little bit of a more normal pace, around 3.5%, 3% a year. So there is that.
thank you for the finance lesson.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you for your presentation. I
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on the agenda, consent calendar. Motion to adopt the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
7, continued public hearing. There's no items. Item 8 on our agenda, new public hearings. So tonight we have L02-24, DR13-24, request for land use permit design review to remove the existing automotive spray booth from the interior of the service building and install an exterior paint booth. So I'll turn it over to staff for a presentation.
Nicole Zittel, Assistant Planner, will give the presentation of this project, and I'll ask the commissioners on the dais to bring the mics a little bit closer. Thank you, Chair. You're doing great. Just we need to pick it up for the audio outgoing. So thanks for that note.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tonight, I will be presenting Land Use Permit Application 224 and Design Review Application Permit 1324 at 3291 Mount Diablo Boulevard to allow the expansion of an existing automotive repair and cleaning use to a detached spray booth and mixing room. As shown on the screen, the property is in the eastern portion of the East End District in Lafayette. The property is in the General Commercial District 1 with an underlying land use designation of East End Commercial, which prioritizes a variety of services such as auto use service uses that may not be appropriate in other districts in the downtown. The existing building is currently owned and operated by Lafayette Auto Body. The graphic shown is of the existing business as seen from Mount Diablo Boulevard. The project proposes to remove an existing spray booth, which is in the envelope of the existing building, and place a 582 square foot prefabricated spray booth and mixing room in the southeast corner of the parcel. The site is required to have 13 parking spaces, which the project complies with. The applicant proposes to keep the hours of operation the same as the existing auto shop. The spray booth would only operate when a car was being painted and would not be in constant operation, which is consistent with the operation of the existing spray booth. The number of employees on site and the expected number of customers would not change from what is current. In the street view graphic, we see adjacent businesses Minuteman Press and Tailhaven Hotel and Day Lounge. Upslope behind the property is the Lafayette Highlands apartment, which would be screened from the proposed spray booth by existing mature trees. The project site is surrounded by a variety of uses, including a hotel, animal care, apartments, printing business, and communication services. Staff received letters of support from the Lafayette Park Hotel and Spa to the east and Tailhaven Hotel and Day Lounge to the west, and did not receive any comment letters or concerns from anyone else. The site is located in the East End district of the downtown specific plan, which envisions auto-related services allowed by right. Staff finds the project is consistent with the downtown specific plan, as the proposal is a small expansion of the existing permitted use. The proposed project is also environmentally superior to the existing spray booth. In looking at the site plan shown, I have focused in on the area where the spray booth is proposed to be. The proposed placement is set significantly back from the front of the property and provides adequate space between the existing building for both vehicle and pedestrian access. The setbacks are in compliance with the zoning requirements. The current spray booth can't be modified because of its age and present condition. The applicant has noted to staff that there is not enough height and space within the existing building for the spray booth and mixing room they would like to have. Cars being painted in the spray booth would be painted in a cleaner environment and delivered to the customer faster, allowing for fewer cars to remain on site. The proposed mixing room and spray room, as mentioned previously, are also environmentally superior, significantly minimizing overspray that would be emitted into the atmosphere. The north elevations shown on screen displays the height and design of the proposed project. The height and scale is compatible with the existing automotive shop. The architectural style is characteristic of automotive serving businesses and will not be highly visible when viewed from Mount Diablo Boulevard. The new building will be best seen by guests at the Lafayette Park Hotel and Spa. However, as staff has previously noted, the hotel has provided a letter in support of this project. Staff sent the plans to outside referral agencies for comments and received none outside of the standard comments from EB Mud, East Bay Municipal Utility District, and Central Sanitation. Previously mentioned, staff received letters of support upon application submittal from the Lafayette Park Hotel and Tailhaven Hotel and Day Lounge, which are properties, as mentioned, east and west of the project parcel. Staff also received a letter from the property owner of Tailhaven after publication of the staff report, stating that they have no issues with the project. Upon application submittal, the applicant also provided the Bay Area Air Quality Management District's permit to operate, which outlines the conditions to operate a spray booth. In light of support from referral agencies, neighbor letters of support, and staff's analysis in the resolution, that finds the project conforms with the required findings for a land use permit and downtown design review. Staff recommends the Planning Commission find the project exempt from CEQA and adopt Planning Commission Resolution 2024-09, approving the project subject to standard conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll open to the Planning Commission for any questions of staff. Great. The applicant typically now would have 10 minutes for an opportunity to provide a presentation if you so wish. Okay, choosing not to. Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Okay. One question from Commissioner Mason.
Just real briefly, I know you guys have, I've been here a long time and you've been here as long as I can remember. How long have you guys been around?
So, excuse me, do you mind, if Commissioner Mason, if you're going to ask questions, would one of you mind coming to the microphone just so the response is picked up for anyone listening online?
Thank you. And then the other thing,
Sorry, do you mind restating it so we
Okay.
can hear the response?
so, question was first of all, I'd like to say I've taken advantage of your services. I think you guys do excellent work. So
Thank you.
question was, how long have you been at that location?
So we purchased Lafayette Auto Body in October of last year, so it's been about a year now. Can you hear me okay?
I don't believe that mic is on. If you'd press the button in front of it, it will then illuminate red, I believe.
It's red right now.
It's red?
Yeah.
Okay. Could you get a skosh?
Sure. So we purchased Lafayette Auto Body in October of 2023. The business has been in Lafayette, to my knowledge, since 1949. Yeah, we're just trying to make some changes, update it, upgrade it, and just keep doing what we do.
And the second question is, since you're updating it and you're trying to keep it keeping it going, and I'm glad you are, any reason why you weren't asking for an increase in hours, just maybe like Saturday also?
I mean, I think we would just like to keep a 40-hour standard work week for our employees, technicians, all of us, just keep things the same.
Because the reason why I was asking is I believe one of the neighborhood auto body shops is open on Saturdays.
Yeah, I'm not aware.
The one 2 or 3 doors down. But anyway, that's just
Okay.
my mind. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll look to staff to see if there's any members of the public who may wish to provide comment on this item.
Anyone on the Zoom who would like to comment on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand now. Seeing none.
Okay, thank you. Typically, this would be an opportunity for you to provide rebuttal to anything provided by the public. Is there anything additional you would like to add? Okay, then we'll close public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion. I guess I do have one question, maybe. It seems like or maybe someone can just confirm doesn't look like there's any trees being removed. It was hard to tell in one of the images, the box slightly overlapped a tree bubble, but it didn't appear that any trees were being removed. So I'll maybe ask staff or the applicant team to confirm that. The reason being is it's noted that it's providing privacy.
Yes, I can address that. So as part of their application, no trees were proposed for remove. In staff's presentation, the trees that were mentioned are not on the subject parcel, but in the Lafayette Highland Apartments parcel.
Okay, thank you. It also appears that there was a decent amount of outreach that must have been given to neighbors. We don't always see that. I appreciate it. I think everyone on the Planning Commission appreciates it, and the fact that you received 3 letters in support of your project from your direct neighbors, I think speaks highly to the project. So I'll look to see, does anyone on the Planning Commission want to start discussion or make a motion? Commissioner Sturm.
I'll just say that it looks good to me. I don't have any issues, and I'm really glad to hear that upgrades there are more environmentally friendly are also good for their business. That's what we want to see. So I appreciate them for being proactive and finding that synergy, and then also reaching out to the neighbors. So I'm ready to vote in approval.
Okay, let me first check. Commissioner Heisting, did you have comment or a motion?
Yeah, I was going to make a couple comments and then make a motion. I too think it's great that you got the letters of support. That's awesome. Like Chair Radnich said, we don't often get that, so it really goes a long way to help. That we just see that you got the neighborhood support. That's good. I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, you're getting a new updated spray booth and you're gaining space inside on the shop itself, and you're able to turn more cars over and make it more efficient. So I think it's a great project, and I'd be happy to make a motion.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay. I find that the project's exempt from CEQA. I find that let me start over. My recommendation is that we find the project exempt from CEQA and adopt Planning Commission Resolution 2024-9, approving the project subject to conditions.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the item passes. There is a 14-day appeal period should anyone choose to appeal the decision tonight, but thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving down the agenda, other business, item 9, ARC volunteer for Friday, the 27th. This is 9:30 a.m. virtual. The 27th. Okay. So Commissioner Sturm,
I'm volunteering for September 27th.
thank you. Commissioners report. Anybody have anything? Okay. Planning directors report.
Development activity, construction continues for the 22 unit project at 950 Huff Avenue in the downtown. So you'll see continued work going on there, as well as some work at the Lennar site at the northwest corner of Dolores and Mount Diablo Boulevard. We do not have a date which we can announce that we anticipate that to be complete, but it is looking closer and closer each day. And then lastly, you may have noticed that tree removal has begun on the terraces of Lafayette property at the southwest corner of Pleasant Hill and Deer Hill Road. That is preparatory to the project fully getting underway. It's anticipated to start significant site work and grading after the winter rains. So next spring, it would be the more sizable mobilization on site. But preparatory to that, they are removing the trees that were approved to be removed as part of the 315 unit apartment complex.
Okay, thanks. At the beginning of well, did you have a question on that item?
Yes, I was just gonna ask for us any status update on the interviews for planning commission.
Yeah, so I was gonna, yeah.
Yes, we are going back out and soliciting additional time availability from the 4 individuals necessary to conduct the interviews, because the initial outreach, there was no alignment of schedules. So we're looking a little bit further out. So we don't have specific dates yet, but I can probably report that out to you either later this week or at the next meeting.
Great, thank you.
I would suggest every other Monday at 7 p.m. because then we know they'd be available for planning commission. A little joke, probably wasn't a good joke.
We will take that note.
Any other questions of staff of any items? Okay, well then tonight's meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.